What's going on, guys? Welcome in, welcome in. What's going on? What up, what up? What's going on, everyone? What a day. What a day, what a day. Definitely some wild price action. Hopefully, no one got pretty much violated today. I hope you guys pretty much withstand this. Definitely a volatile direction in both ways today. I want to say the least, right? We saw pretty much that whipsaw to the upside, whipsaw right back to the downside. If you try to chase in either direction, it really felt like you just got slaughtered. That's really what today's price action was. And I mean, this is pretty much overall, this is what volatility is basically, right? This is where it pretty much will pretty much violate you in either direction. And that's pretty much what you saw today. All right. But overall, hopefully tomorrow brings us a little bit more of a better day. Actually, I was expecting today to be quite green. We pretty much started out that way, but I was expecting today to be that one green day of the week in particular, in which tomorrow would lead us up into some fair going into in CPI data on Thursday. So I do expect the market to get a little bit spooked tomorrow ahead of the inflation data. And obviously we see the price action after hours here even volatile as well. We see pretty much SPY just dropped about $1.40 here after hours as well. But I expected this kind of volatility rather so tomorrow, not necessarily today. I thought we would stay green today. That was not the case into the close here. But the other factor is that we have to understand as this market is pretty much so much headline driven right now. It's pretty much just disgusting right now. You can literally be holding one position, and the next thing you know, a headline comes out, and we're literally just moving directions. So very much so that you pretty much you once you see profit, you see that you're in green in a position. Do not try to hold it to say, you know what, oh, is it going to this spot? Is it going to that spot? If it's me personally, and especially those of you that are pretty much newer to this type of market, just once you see your position go green, take your profits and be happy with them. That's pretty much what my message would be as far as what you saw following today's price action. Because imagine more so that you were holding calls towards pretty much the peak of today, and then you ended up just waiting for it to hit, all right, this price point, that price point, this resistance. And then the next thing you know, pretty much the market just reversed pretty hard on you, right back to the downside. And that's exactly the point of what I want to make, right? Once you see your position go green, you take your profits, you just wait for the next setup. But just look to practice taking your profits pretty quickly until this market finds some kind of, I want to say, not necessarily a bottom, but also once we see the volatility index itself start to regress under about this 30 mark that we're sitting at here. All right. So, and that's pretty much what I would pretty much stress here right now. I'll look into that Tarek into Oxy here real quick. Let me just get through the names that I just wanted to pretty much touch bases on. But then also, Sids, would love to know what was that news. The news headline that came out, I pretty much had it. Let me actually just double check. I know that I tweeted it out. Let me see what it was earlier on, real quick. Oh, it was because Ukrainian nod to Russia. We are no longer insisting on NATO membership. So there's pretty much just no peace within what Russia and Ukraine is pretty much continuing to do. And so that's pretty much what it is. We're not really seeing anything that's really progressed. This is just continuing to get worse as it is. All right. But if I get into real quick, just looking at SPY really briefly here in terms of just some key spots, key levels on which I'm watching to break up or break down in particular. As we see, we still pretty much have this nice little wedge action, pretty much blow up my SPY chart here on TradingView. But we see we pretty much look to set a new low here today. We were pretty much on the verge of it. Once I saw us testing down towards that 415 mark on SPY, it was just a good spot that we ended up trying to hold early on before we pretty much just ripped intraday there. And so that's why I do have the zone pretty much set 415, 416. I'm going to look to see if buyers step in there yet again going into tomorrow. So as we see, we pretty much closed right there at that borderline, just above that 415 support that we ripped off of today. I'm going to look to see if bulls can pretty much defend that level in which we get a nice bounce tomorrow more so. Otherwise, if we lose that level, that 415 mark, we pretty much risk losing this this bottom that we had back from February 24th of 410.64, and then we have this massive gap fill here between 400 to 403, and that's going to be no joke, especially for those of you that pretty much have long-term portfolios in terms of calls or shares. It's going to get even more brutal going down towards 403 to 400 zone, and that's not going to be pretty. But the other thing to also keep in mind is that once we get down towards that 400 to 403, so I give you pretty much no, I want to say no, more so a sneak peek of what to expect or what you should be doing around that spot. That 400 to 403 range, once we hit this bottom level support on this falling wedge, that would likely be where you want to take up pretty much a short-term position in looking for the bounce. As you see that we have pretty much bounced off of the support quite a bit. We bounced on it back in December, again in the end of January and the end of February. So likely more so we'll see this towards the third week, maybe more so towards OPEX of next week, or maybe the week after in which we get down towards the support, this gap fill. So that's just a sneak peek in terms of what you should be looking for in terms of this bottom level trend line support and what you would want to do there basically. All right. But again, 415, 416, we want to see the Bulls hold this. If we get to hold this, then I'm looking towards range up towards 424. And then potentially, I think we can target here about 428, even more so. So 420 is pretty much my high end target here. I don't think we get more so over 428. But if we do, we do have this small, tiny gap fill here as well at 433. So I'll keep an eye on it. We'll see what it's about here, but I'm hoping that we end up defending this 415 mark like we did intraday here today. All right. Yeah, CPI data is on Thursday, so I was expecting us to pretty much have the fear kick in tomorrow more so, and then we were pretty much dumped going into CPI data. But the fact that we just dumped so early on, continuing, we would expect to have some kind of one green day at least this week in particular. So if that is going to end up happening, I would see that potentially being tomorrow then more so, in which the market is just going to shrug off this Russian news, maybe some kind of headline, something good comes out of it tomorrow. But I would expect tomorrow then to more so be that green day of the week here, and then we will likely get the dump out of CPI data on Thursday. Otherwise, the other scenario I'm thinking in my mind is that normally how I would say is that when you get breaking news that's usually bad, the first reaction is the bad reaction. Maybe we get bad data on CPI on Thursday, we rally off of it, and then Friday is just our end of week dump. That's the other scenario I'm just playing off in my head right now. All right. But that's pretty much what I'm looking at in terms of SPY. Just running through some charts that caught my attention here more so today. One was Apple. Of course, Apple had their event. They literally just pretty much moved right into their event and sold off pretty nicely. So that was no surprise. I pretty much said that on live. Like, pretty much if you were looking to play the run up, look to sell right before the event because you did not want to get caught in that whipsaw. All right. But that's what I pretty much was expecting. Now, if we do get some kind of action back to the upside, in which that's where our bull bear scenario comes in play, as I said on SPY on chart, pretty much if we get the bounce, I'm looking for a nice little move here up towards 559.80. That's pretty much been a very confluent level here that we've tested quite frequently. February, end of February, end of January, and pretty much the end of November to end of December, more beginning of December action. So that's why I would expect us to retest that 159.80 mark. Once we retest that, then obviously then we're risking to take out the previous lows here from February 24th, and that's when Apple's gonna get pretty ugly. Just a quick also highlight on Apple, in which I pretty much have come across multiple articles, multiple tweets about Apple in terms of the market volatility and how Apple has actually been reacting to it, right? We've seen cases where Facebook has actually just bled out. We've seen Netflix bleed out. We've seen Google and Amazon more so takes quite a bit of heat, and even Google more so despite having announced a stock split. And so basically, what I'm pretty much anticipating out of that and what I've read about it is that Apple has not taken much heat out of this market volatility. And that's really where I'm reading a lot of articles in terms of once we see Facebook, Netflix, Amazon, these kind of names start to find bottoms in terms that they're maybe major support levels, it's likely that we're going to see Apple and Microsoft really start to tumble. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'm gonna kind of monitor Apple and Microsoft a little bit more so to see maybe what their key major support levels are. I haven't done it on a larger time frame just yet, so I'm gonna look at that. Obviously, we see pretty much where our lows are, and I do think it's gonna get ugly, pretty much under the level of 150, more so. But that's what I'm gonna be looking at. I'm gonna probably tweet it out once I do end up looking at both of those charts. And that's one more so thing that I haven't really looked at Apple and Microsoft through this volatility because we haven't really seen them tumble as much, more so during all of this. I think Amazon, Netflix, and Facebook more so have taken more of this heat. Also throwing it, Google is there as well. But those four names have really taken the heat off of this drop. Not even Tesla has actually dropped off as much as I expected. I think at some point this actually should have been about a what $500 stock, and that name has actually been holding up quite a bit in this 800 level. So that's another thing that's very surprising. So Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla, I think they have a ways to drop, and that's pretty much what I've been reading about is the bigger picture. So that's just an insight on that. That actually does lead me right into Tesla's chart, in which I was actually watching here today as well. Today, I think the price action today on Tesla was pretty much just very predictable, more so, in which that once I saw what pattern was developing, I literally just took a short pretty beautifully off of it. We had this little basically, I have my supply zone here at the top here. If Tesla does want to continue to run, once I saw this little ascending wedge action, in which that zone was, my supply zone was pretty much 865 up towards 869 is what I was watching for. But what the predictable part was is this little ascending broadening wedge action we had. Once we ended up breaking below this 836 mark, that was literally just a quick easy short right down towards 824, and that's exactly what I ended up playing out, right? So I ended up looking to get a retracement here. This retracement that I did from the bottom here, it was a 0.786 retracement, in which that basically ended up being our local top here intraday. And that's why I also ended up getting a nice little short off of this double top action as well. So that's pretty much the first thing that I identified, and then breaking the support was the second thing that I identified in terms of getting a nice short off of Tesla. So I didn't play the reversal back towards the retest, basically what you would say. But that was definitely the play of the day that I actually ended up having, was that double top action intraday and then breaking the support off of this intraday wedge action. In which that was pretty much also the time of when Discord pretty much went down. So that was a disappointment that I couldn't really say too much about that. All right. But that was the play that I was watching for. So I'm going to look to see if we end up breaking below this 824 level tomorrow, in which my demand zone that I'll pretty much be looking for is this 809 to 812 mark to see if buyers step in here as they did previously here this morning. All right. Otherwise, if we lose this 809 level, then we're risking the takeout lows here, in which we're going to see this market volatility just continue to escalate as it's already has been. All right. So that's Tesla. The other name that caught my attention was JPM. I haven't been looking too much into the banks either. So that's pretty much what I did look at today. The one thing that caught my attention today off of the banks was this trendline support off of JPM. If I try to expand it as much as possible, I think it looks off of the weekly. It's probably a little bit better. So looking at the trendline support off of JPM, this is what caught my attention. We hit this trendline support here May 11th. September 20, that was September 2020, and now we've actually just hit it as well again. So I am looking to see if there's any upside here. The 52-week low was also sitting right around this 127 mark, which we basically wicked down off of already, and that's what I'm going to be looking for as well. Anyone here from Twitch chat? That's a very interesting point to say. But again, I'm looking at the trendline support here on JPM, sitting right near the 52-week low off of that 127 level. I'm gonna look to see if there's any kind of life here off of JPM. I'll be looking at the other banks more so tomorrow morning once we see if XLF has any kind of life in it tomorrow. But bigger spot, I wanted to see how we react off the 52-week low and the trendline support. If we get some kind of upward movement, I am targeting 134. And then I do have where the breakdown spot was in terms of that 140 level. So I would more so be playing this off of the 134 mark. And I did take a small overnight position on it. There's nothing crazy that I'm pretty much not willing to lose overnight. Obviously, I don't want to get caught in the crossfire of the market volatility, so I did keep it relatively small. I'm pretty much what I'm willing to risk, if I want to say. But Very nice level. I think that it's pretty much just a nice spot that it's sitting at near the 52-week low. Beautiful weekly trendline support. I think it was pretty much the risk reward was ideally there, and that's why I say keep an eye on this one tomorrow, and more so keep an eye on XLF along with that one. All right. Two other names real quick that caught my attention was the other one was Airbnb. I know that Avery was pretty much taking a peep at this one, as I pretty much looked at the chart a little bit more. So towards about lunchtime, I think I looked at it. I think it pretty much just crossed my attention a little bit more, and it actually intrigued me to look at it tomorrow. So pretty much my supply level, well, I should say my demand zone, pretty much what I'm sitting at here towards the bottom. If we retrace down to the downside, looking between 135 to 136 here as a potential buy zone yet again. Otherwise, I'm looking to cross up here over this 145 mark. That'll be where I look to buy calls on this tomorrow. And my upside target here is sitting right around 152, and that'll be looking where I want to take my profits. All right. So I do like the spot on this one as well. I think that was some hella strength here on Airbnb despite that market volatility today. So that's why I think it is something that has to be on my watch list tomorrow, just because of the fact of the strength that it's pretty much sitting with off of today, despite all of this in the market. I think this is one, once it crosses that 145 mark, hopefully it does not gap up over that. This will be one that I pretty much watch, and that'll be a beautiful move. All right. Let me see the other one that I was watching. The other one was AMD. Someone asked me about this one pre-market, and once I ended up seeing the chart itself, I know it's pretty much been trying to fight that $100 mark more so. I did like this one in particular. If we do see any kind of upside here in the market, off of today's lows, pretty much again defending SPY 415, hopefully, right? I'm gonna be looking to see this one. If we get a further retracement back to the downside, I'll be looking to see a buyer step in here right around this 103 to high 102 mark. I'll be looking to see a buyer step in there. Otherwise, I'm looking for a break over 110, and then I'll be targeting 114 to 115 on this one for my upside. All right. So that's pretty much just taking it level by level right now in terms of each of these names. Waiting to see what SPY gives us tomorrow, whether it's a gap up, gap down. I do think that we get some kind of push to the upside here tomorrow. Granted that we had a flush yesterday, a flush again today. I do think that if there's going to be any kind of upside action, it's going to be likely tomorrow ahead of the CPI data then, if that's the way that we're trying to play this, right? There's usually an if and then scenario, and that's basically what I'm looking at right now. If we pretty much pump tomorrow, then we basically dump off a CPI data on Thursday. Otherwise, if we don't rally tomorrow, we dump for the basically like third day in this week, then it's entirely possible that the CPI data that's gonna likely end up being bad, the first reaction is gonna be pretty much a nice rally on Thursday, and then we dump to close out the week on a bad note. All right. Am I looking to play Airbnb short or long? The chart is telling me long, and that's why I say relatively because of the strength that it had despite the market conditions. So if we get a move over 110 on air on well, why am I looking at AMD talking about that? But if I get a move here over what my resistance was over 145, then I'm playing this up towards 151 half is what I'm looking at. Otherwise, if we can't crack that 145 and we start to get retracements, I'm looking for a potential demand zone here at around this 135 to 136, where buyers should start to step in. And that's basically what I'm looking at in terms of Airbnb. Again, everything right now that I'm looking at is more so a if and then right now, right? We want to see how the market actually responds come tomorrow. If there's actually upside on SPY here tomorrow, or is there a downside, right? There's no definitive answer to say that the market's going to be green or it's going to be red tomorrow. And I think we pretty much, from live, you pretty much got that kind of vibe from me, Avery, and also from Dapper as well. Just the price action is just abysmal. I know that Dapper was talking about the fact that, there's just no buyers, no sellers pretty much who was pushing the market today towards the end of the day. And that's what's more concerning. And that's why I even started off the segment pretty much talking about once you see yourself in profits, look to take your profits. Don't look to say, all right, I'm gonna pretty much take my profits at a certain resistance, or I'm gonna actually wait for it to hit this exact price point or this exact percentage. That's not exactly what you want to do in this kind of market volatility with the volatility index basically that elevated. Once the volatility index starts to regress at some point, I mean, hopefully it happens maybe next week or some point, at least at the bare minimum, right? Then you can start to actually hold your position a little bit longer. But in terms of the whipsaw that we saw today, if you were holding calls at the top and you didn't take your profits right away, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Is that you probably were in profits at the top of when SPY reversed today, and you didn't take your position, and you didn't take those profits basically. So that's what I pretty much wanted to point out about that. Real quick before I know that someone asked about one ticker real quick, so I'm gonna try that one out. Oh well, three tickers. I already tried that one, but I'll take a look at those two real quick, and that'll likely be our wrap here. Someone wanted me to look at Oxy. I'll take a look at Oxy. Sounds like actually more so of a SIG type of ticker. This thing has just been on a moon mission right now. Jeez. I mean, well, I think that's pretty much oil in general, actually, to say the least. Let's see if I look at the weekly. I think the weekly gives you a better indication of what levels you would pretty much want to be looking at in terms of also where your potential supply demand zones are. If I'm looking at this and pretty much I'm eyeballing here in terms of where our potential supply zone is, it looks like you pretty much wicked right into your supply zone here, and that's why we saw it pretty much regress today. If we hit pretty much from our lows of January 2016, also lows from July of 2017, and as you see, we pretty much wicked that area and broke down right between December of 2018, and we broke down, we flushed, not even break down, we flushed April of 2019. So that's pretty much the zone in which I will be looking to see us get over. If we can push north of the $60 mark, that's when I would say that I would look for an entry on Oxy. But until it ends up clearing that level, that $60 mark over this supply zone right now, I would stay sidelined because right now this is the spot in which you would potentially take your profits right now, because you're basically hitting right into resistance off of these prior years in which that's acted as support previously. So now that's basically going to act as resistance, that $60 mark that you basically wicked right into that supply zone. All right. Otherwise, if you're looking to get a nice little dip potential entry, then you're looking for basically a retracement here in which this is my retracement. I'm just going to change the color so you see the difference in terms of supply and demand zone here. This will potentially be my near-term demand zone in which I would look to step in. All right. And that's pretty much looking off of the prior distribution that we had back from 2019. This was our prior peak here in which before we sold off right around that 47 half. That's basically what you're looking at in terms of retracement. You have a little bit of a minor support right around here. It's what I'm looking at from where we pretty much look to hold support or resistance. Right around this $49 mark is what I'll be looking at also. So 49 would be where I would look to scale in. Otherwise, your ideal spot to buy if you see a retracement off of this will be right around this 46 to $47 mark is what I'll be looking at as a potential dip buy. All right. So that's potentially the dip buy. Otherwise, I think the mental number right here, right now, is that you want to see this back over the $60 level, in which that crosses back over the support of what we had the prior years. Otherwise, this you're going to continue to smack your head right into the $60 area, and you're going to see sellers just continue to smack their head and just push price right back down. All right. The other one that you mentioned was Amazon. I know Amazon's just been taking a beating. It's literally just sad to see Amazon right now, and there's just literally no life. Every pump that the market even has, Amazon just feels like it has no life right now. I haven't even been looking at this name at all. I think if you looked at it potentially for a short, that'll probably be the most ideal scenario. But there's nothing here that says that I want to participate and hold any kind of call position on Amazon right now, if I'm being honest with you. Because every pump that it tries to make, it literally just gets pushed right back down. And that's just disappointing. But if I'm looking for my near term demand zone, I would be literally looking at towards this 2400 mark. I don't think there's too much. Um, in terms of how this volatility is just continuing, I do think it's headed down towards that mid 2400 level. That's pretty much where I would look at off of this weekly. Otherwise, if you're really looking for pretty much our near term in terms of maybe like this week type of price action, let's see where our potential buy zone is right here. Yeah, you're sitting right near that buy zone. I think you're pretty much sitting right between it. You're about to smack your head on it very closely. Right around this 2600 half is what you're looking at. Between 2635 up towards 2651 is what I'm looking at in terms of your potential buy as of right now for a short term potential. All right. And that's what I'll be looking at in terms of your buying opportunity. Otherwise, to be honest with you, right here, right now, if you're trying to buy Amazon, this is just a knife catch that you're pretty much walking yourself into. And that's not necessarily just a butcher knife. All right. So that's pretty much what I would say right now. As you see, it even when the market pumped early on this morning, Amazon did not have any life. I think at the most it was up today was about $15 or $16 at the most early on this morning. But once the market started to roll over, it literally just went right with it, and that was it. And you see after hours, it's already down quite a bit. So it's not the name, especially with market volatility, that I want to be a part of, just because of the fact that it's already a volatile ticker to start with, and you're just adding market volatility on top of this right now. And if you're pretty much even wrong by just the slightest measure, this is going to be very costly. All right. So I just wanted to make sure that I pretty much point that out. But other than that, that pretty much that mid 2600 level is where I would potentially look to get a short term position if you're looking to play the bounce. All right. Should we be bullish on oil and gas? Actually, yes, you should. You should be pretty much bullish on oil and gas. I think the past few weeks, maybe months, more so to say. I think that's really just been the sentiment, the storyline, and then also pretty much also your metals you should also be bullish on. So pretty much looking, I know that Avery was talking about silver this morning. Gold also had a crazy $13 million buyer on GLD. I think they smacked about like 190 calls on that. So that's another one. So looking at oil, gas, metals, I think that's pretty much the areas that you pretty much want to look at. I know that just up until the beginning of the week here, they were talking also about wheat being just going vertical. So that's another one that's pretty much you want to keep your eyes on all of those different things, all those different commodities as well. All right. So those are pretty much what you would want to be looking at, other than more so looking at tech and the names that I pretty much crossed on the board here on the watch list. But obviously, these are names that are pretty much very common that we all look at. And that's why usually the names that Sig and Dapper look at are very low key names. And that's why, they pretty much went where the rotation has been right now. And also Avery looking at silver. That was definitely one that just jumped this morning. I think at one point of the day it was up about like 4% on silver. So definitely keep an eye on the metals, keep an eye on the oil and gas, and those are things that you really want to be paying attention to more so if you're trying to avoid this market volatility. All right. Other than that, though, I think those are just the names I'm just keeping an eye on. Just keeping my watch list rather just small. I'm not trying to look at too many different takers and just waiting to see what the market gives me. I think I only took about what, like 3 trades today between getting into Tesla twice and then also scalping spy calls, which I did towards mark. I think it was Power Hour. I think I did that towards, and that was pretty much all my trades were. So despite looking at the market all day, I didn't want to get caught too much in all of this volatility. And you even heard Dapper just saying today's price action, yesterday's price action, it was just horrendous. And that's why I just pretty much wanted to stay disciplined. And that's all I did was basically just wait for my entries, wait for my setups, rather than just trying to force my hand into the market just the sake of being in the market. All right. But I think that kind of wraps up what I was looking at. Hopefully, that kind of helps you guys in terms of what I was watching, what I'm seeing from the market in general. But more so, just stay fluid. Do not try to push your entries, all right? Because wrong entries and holding for too long, those are two things that will be very costly in this kind of environment. All right. I think that's pretty much my biggest message here today. But other than that, again, guys, I think that'll wrap it up for today's session. I will see you guys on live tomorrow morning. But I'm out. Later, guys.